this is Jen from Winrose Fiber Studio. Today we're going to crochet a zinnia flower hair clip. So hi, how are you? Hope you're having a good day. We're going to start by crocheting a zinnia flower like this little yellow one. Only today I'm going to be using this medium weight craft yarn in the color pink. I've got a 5mm crochet hook, a yarn needle, and a pair of scissors. To turn our crocheted flower into a hair clip, we'll need some actual metal hair clips, just like this one. And you can see that we'll be attaching it to the back of the flower with some hot glue. I'm going to be using a mini hot glue gun. And I'm also going to have some fine or 120 grit sandpaper handy, just so I can rough up the metal on that hair clip a little bit and make it easier for the glue to adhere. We'll be getting into all of that a little bit later, but let's begin by crocheting our flower. Attach your yarn to your hook with a slip knot and begin by chaining 2. Then you're going to work 6 single crochets in the second chain from your hook. In round 2, we're going to be working in the back loops only. For this round, you'll work 2 single crochets in each stitch around. At the end of round 2, you'll have a total of 12 stitches, and in front of these stitches will be 6 unworked front loops. Okay, let's carry on with round 3, continuing in the round and also continuing to work in the back loop only. You're going to slip stitch in the next stitch and then chain 10. And then you're going to slip stitch in the same stitch. This is your repeating pattern all the way around. So you go back to slip stitch in the next stitch, chain 10, and then slip stitch in the same stitch, then back to that repeat. Round 3, you'll be repeating this a total of 12 times, and this will create your 12 large petals of your flower. We've just time traveled to the end of round 3, and I'm working on my very last repeat or my very last large petal. And now if I go back and count, we can make sure that we have a total of 12 loops or large petals on our flower. And if you look at the middle of the flower, you can see we have sort of this spiral of unworked front loops, and we're going to be working into those front loops now. We're continuing to work in the round, and if you look at the next petal, you'll see an unworked front loop right at the base of that petal. And that's where we're going to begin round 4. So for round 4, you're going to slip stitch in the next stitch, and remember that next stitch is the unworked front loop, and you can either think of this as being in front of or at the base of the next large petal. So you'll slip stitch in that stitch and then chain 8, and then we're going to slip stitch back into that same stitch, and this is going to be our repeating pattern for round 4. You'll slip stitch into the next unworked front loop, and you can see that it helps to kind of bend those petals back This gets them out of your way, but it also sort of presents those unworked front loops to you as you work your way around. So you'll slip stitch in the next stitch, chain 8, slip stitch in the same stitch, and then back to the beginning of that repeat. You're going to do this for a total of 12 times all the way around. These are your medium petals for your zinnia flower. Once again, we've time traveled and we're on our very last medium petal. Here's our last large petal. And so we're going to find the unworked front loop right at the base of that last large petal. We'll slip stitch into that, chain 8, and then slip stitch back into that same stitch. Now we've got 2 layers of petals, and if you look closely at your flower, the only unworked front loops left are from the very first 6 single crochets. So we've got a total of 6 unworked front loops left. So if you trace that line down from the medium petal, you'll see that our very next stitch is going to go in the unworked front loop that's located just at the base of or underneath the next petal. Slip stitch into that front loop and then chain 6. You can see our petals are getting smaller as we come to the center. Then slip stitch back into that same stitch. And then you're going to repeat this 6 times, or a total of 6 times, 5 more times. So here's our second one. And then chain 6. And then slip stitch back into that same stitch. Repeat that pattern until you have a total of 6 small petals. And then together we'll finish off our flower. Here we are on our last small petal, and the flower really can start to feel a bit unruly, but you've got one little petal to go. So slip stitch into that same stitch, and that finishes off the last small petal. And then you can see I've sort of elongated the last loop on my hook and then cut off the working yarn. What I like to do when I finish off the flowers is I work my hook from back to front, grab the working yarn and pull it through to the back. And then I do the same thing with the last loop. I work my crochet hook from back to front, not through the exact same space, but to one just next to it. And then I pull that loop through to the back. You can see I've got my cut working yarn and my final loop, and there's a stitch in between them. And then I can just pull that cut yarn through my last loop and finish off my flower. Now, if you wanted to tie this onto a hat or a scarf, you could use your beginning and ending tails to do so. You could also use them to tie your flower onto a pin back. But today, we're turning our flower into a hair clip, so I'm going to speed right along and weave in my loose ends. With that bit of yarn maintenance done, we can admire our finished zinnia flower. And now we can focus on turning this little flower into a hair clip. It's time to grab that little metal clip and prepare ourselves to glue the clip onto the flower. With the front or the top of the clip facing us, we're going to use our fine grit sandpaper to rough up either side of the metal. This is where we're going to be adding our glue and by sanding the metal just a little bit, it'll rough it up and give the glue a little something more to adhere to. While the glue is heating up, let's think about how we're going to do this. It's kind of nice to practice it first. You can see I've got my pointer finger in the middle of the flower, and then I'm turning it over and almost kind of folding the flower in half. And then I'm just practicing picking up the clip and laying it right across the center of my folded flower. So I'm literally going to practice the way I want to hold the flower and the way I want to lay the clip. And that way it'll feel really natural to me when it comes time to put the clip onto the flower. Hot glue dries so fast, so you really do need to move a little more quickly once the glue is on the hair clip. So now it's time to carefully add the glue to the metal hair clip. Remember, the tip of glue guns can be very hot. The hot glue is very hot, so just be careful with your fingers. I'm doing my best to put a nice thin bead of glue on those two metal strips, and then I'm resting it right on the back of my zinnia flower. Through trial and error, I have found that it's best not to push down on the clip too hard because you don't want any of the hot glue to seep outside of the edges of the metal strips. Hot glue adheres very, very well to yarn, so it will fix to the yarn with just the littlest bit of pressure. In about a minute to a minute and a half, you'll already be able to feel that the metal on the clip has cooled and that the glue has fixed the clip to your flower. At this point, I remembered to take a measurement for you, so it's about 3 inches or 8 centimeters in diameter. And now we have our sweet little zinnia flower hair clip. If you don't have hot glue, or if you're just uncomfortable working with the hot glue gun, you could use other kinds of craft glue. Pick one that will adhere to the metal. E6000 comes to mind. If you're using a glue like that, you'll need to gently set it onto the back of the flower and probably let it set up overnight. My mannequin has been so gracious as to model the flower clip for us. I have 2 adorable nieces who love to wear flowers in their hair, so I was making these clips for them, and then I thought there might be other people who would enjoy this project as well. So if you are a flower person or if you know one, this is a very quick and easy gift. They're also very fun to make. It combines 2 of my favorite things, crochet and crafting, so you get a little bit of both. Oh, I had to show you a red one. One of my nieces loves red and the other one loves pink, so of course I had to make both colors. I'm going to make sure you're set up with all of the links that you need to make this project. They'll all be found in the description below. If you enjoyed today's project, please hit like and subscribe. I post tutorials weekly, and I'm really looking forward to sharing even more of my patterns with you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.